Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults. All right, welcome everybody to the Pivotal Podcast. I would tell you what episode this is, but I've lost count. I don't know. I'm not good at numbers, but I am so glad to be here with Andrea Sawtell, your friend and mine, as always. And we have a very special guest, Crystal Flores, all the way from the far-flung region of Maryland. So welcome, Crystal. So glad that you are going to be here. Crystal, we're going to get to know you in a second. But first of all, to our dedicated listeners, you know, Andrea is full of surprises. And the surprise that I caught this morning is a picture on her wall behind her. So, Andrea, I'm going to guess that most people in this country do not have a framed picture of Waffle House hanging on their wall. So tell us about that.
Okay, I thought you were going to say most people haven't been to the Waffle House, which
could most be people, like, if they haven't, they need to.
Okay, agreed, and could be a podcast episode in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at my house this morning because it's early, and I am in my upstairs room, and that is a picture of the Waffle House that Nate's uncle actually drew for us. So it's a drawing, which is actually pretty
No, it isn't. That is not a drawing.
It is a drawing. It's true. I take it off the wall. It's like a colored pencil drawing.
Okay.
So which is pretty sweet. So, but I'm obsessed with the Waffle House. I know people think it's dirty. I could say a million things.
No, dirt never killed me. That's why we love it.
But I'll tell you a fun fact before we get started. When I lived in Maryland, I did not live very far away from Crystal. We had a Waffle House down the street, and prior to having kids, Nate and I would, this is no lie, Nate's my husband, we would wake up, we both had full-time jobs, at 1 a.m. and be like, want to go to the Waffle House? And we would get out of our bed, and we would go to the Waffle House, and I would get hash browns with onions and jalapenos, and a bacon cheddar biscuit. This was our life. So I love the Waffle House.
Yes.
There's your fun facts for the day, Jerry.
Yeah. And the fact that is a drawing is incredible. So our listeners,
he's actually a really good artist.
Well, yeah, what you're gonna do is take a screenshot, and then everyone's gonna zoom in on it and see, is it really a drawing? True. That's amazing. True. That is amazing.
It is. Yeah. That's not my car. I drive nothing like that. Yeah. So, but
too bad, because that's a sweet ride.
I know.
My dad used to have a car just like that. We called it a boat.
Oh yeah. It is definitely a boat.
Huge. Anyway, okay. Waffle House, we love you. Looking for sponsorship, Waffle House.
Shout out to Waffle House. Send us things.
Right. Yeah, send us things. They have the best mugs, by the way. Their coffee mugs are
They do. Best. They're true diner mugs.
Yeah. All right. Enough about that. Let's get on to Crystal. Crystal Flores is our special guest. Crystal and I just met just this past weekend. I was actually up in Maryland. Crystal, how far were we from where you live now?
We're like an hour away.
Okay. So we were in Emmitsburg, Maryland.
Yes.
At Summit Lake Camp, I think it was, up in the woods. No cell signal, so good luck. But we were up in the woods at a young adult retreat, and I was honored to be the speaker for the weekend. And I got to meet Crystal. We had a meal together, and it was just really wonderful. A delightful person. By the end of this episode, guaranteed 100%, you're going to be like I am. I love Crystal. Crystal's just such a sweet spirit. So she's going to share. We got some things to talk about what it means and what it's like to live as a young adult in 2026. You guys, it's 2026. Hard to believe. This is our first episode of 2026. Well, we're recording, so that's exciting too. So, Crystal, tell us a little bit about yourself, and whatever you want to share. Give us a nice little Crystal intro.
Yeah, so I am a part-time grad student at UMB, so University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And luckily, I go to a Shady Grove campus where a bunch of universities are also there. So I get to see other students from other universities as well for social work. And so it's really interesting to have that experience, I think. And I'm also a part-time paraeducator for pre-K students. I am in the afternoon shift, so I typically see the students during their lunchtime, and a majority of them come to hug me and stuff. And I think That is just so sweet, and it makes my day, to be honest. And I'm also the oldest of four girls, so that's really interesting.
Para, okay, so actually a couple of times this weekend I heard the word para-educator, and I'll just be honest, I'm not familiar with that term. Can you like what is a para-educator?
A paraeducator is like an assistant teacher.
Okay,
Just a little more group work is, I guess, involved in the role
okay,
because I get to gather at least groups of three students and help them out a little more or like
okay,
assist them more with like learning their names,
yeah,
learning a certain subject in math. And by that, I just basically continue do that more so than what an assistant teacher would probably work on more.
okay. That makes sense. Yeah, good for
And
you. So go ahead,
Crystal, how
Andrea.
old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Okay, my question, which Andrea just flew right out of my head.
The first question?
I had a question right there. Okay. Anyway, no. Okay, it's back. It's back.
Different question.
So you're headed in the direction of social work.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I have never been a social worker. I have, I mean, I have contact with people who are in social work. I'm always so inspired and really blown away by people who want to go into social work because I I feel like it's a completely encompassing job, but it seems to be largely a thankless job. Like when I'm out and about and I see somebody in a uniform, I make it a habit of just like thanking them for, serving our community. But social workers are such an integral part of our community, but you don't have a uniform or like I wouldn't know if I'm, out and about. I wouldn't know, but I would want to thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. So, what was it that has drawn you into that line of work?
Well, I was in high school, so I guess I could say like I benefited from one of the social work programs, which was
Mm,
a program called ACEs, which was for students that are first generation students trying to get into colleges and just continuing a higher education. And for me, I had that privilege to benefit from a workshop where a social worker came in and described her job. And then one of the things that stood out to me from what she said was, you have to be optimistic in order to be a social work. And I'm optimistic. I was like, that's me. Like I'm a person that loves to look at the positives. I want to look at, the brighter side of things. And
yeah.
so I at the beginning, I was like I was sure I was going to be a teacher. I got my 90+9 certification in the child development program for high school. I my was a teacher in El Salvador, and here too, she's a paraeducator. And so I was like, I thought for the longest I was going to be like a teacher. But when I heard that, I can look at the brighter side of things and I can like actually help people like how I was helped and get the resources like I got the resources, I think that interested me even more.
Mm.
And so I was like, wow, this is such a like broader way for me to help students and particularly, and I was like, wow, this is it like for me. So yeah.
That's so
That's just
cool.
so, yeah, I was gonna say that's so cool. My major was social work, so I have a degree in social work also, my undergrad. But it's so cool when you think about the impact that one person has on somebody's life. Like I feel like we hear those stories all the time, but to think that something somebody said or did for you changed the trajectory of your life, and that person probably, one comment to you, we don't think anything that we say is going to matter. And that's just so beautiful that now at 24 you're looking back going, that person said this and that like led me down this path. And there's like so much power in words as you're working with young people. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it would be fascinating if we could like poll the general population of the like people who are in a career or whatever how many of them are in that career because at some point when they were younger, they saw someone in that career and that was just something that was magnetic to them? Or I would guess it's probably like most people have somebody, and maybe it's not like the same exact job, but something like what someone else was doing was like, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. That's where I want to go. I think it would be a lot of people. So, and I
Yeah.
love the whole idea of you have to be optimistic. That is such a, I would guess in social work, such a true statement. I know it's true in ministry. That's for sure. You have to be. There's
Yes.
definitely a sense of optimism that that better conditions and better days are ahead. So yeah, that's for sure. Okay, Crystal, thanks for giving us a little peek into who you are and what your life is and what you're about. So we have questions that we like to ask our guests, and we're going to dive into those. So here's the first question: what's something about young adulthood that stretched you or surprised you, maybe more than you expected it would?
I have two things. I'm gonna start with the first one, which is like my cultural values. I has stretched my faith, I want to say, because I coming out of high school, well, in high school actually, I didn't really think my culture as like part of my identity so much. Like in school, I knew I was like Hispanic and I always hung out with like Hispanic students or like other people of color more so than like my white counterpart, sadly. But I never really thought that because of like my experiences as a Hispanic student would really impact like me in my adulthood. And so I learned how much like my family value, like in a Hispanic household, family is so important. And so when I leaned into that more during my young adulthood, I was like, wow, like I would like I don't know what I'd do without my family like supporting me, and I don't know what I'd do without having like these important conversations, these other experiences that like my family members have experienced with Christ and everything. And so for me like my culture has really impacted how I view God
Mhm.
and how like that really sticks with me like right now too. Like I don't know, it just makes me I don't know, feel like God has impacted like people of color so much and like not just, the white counterpart
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
here. And then for a second one is like my career. When I chose to be in social work, I was a social work intern and I had the privilege to meet all kinds of people and in different kinds of life and like helping in a way was really like God's way of saying like, look, you're not just Crystal, you're also like a child of God going into this setting. And when somebody's like is saying that they're also Christian to me, they were they were like excited that like I was also Christian and everything. And I was like, I never, wow, like I'm in this space helping and being the hands and feet of Christ and like feeding the hungry and clothing the naked. And it's like that to me was so empowering and like stretched my faith a lot because I'm like not just helping them just 'cause like it's my job, is I'm helping them 'cause it's also like God's mission to help.
Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
good. That's good. Um, Love it. So one of the things that I have thought for years, wondered more like, is I wonder what our like American church condition would be, how different it would be if we really took seriously the parable that Jesus shared about the sheep and the goats. And he said that when the king returns and he's going to separate the nations as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And the delineating factor between the sheep and the goats was the people who fed the hungry and visited those in prison and visited those who were sick and gave water to people who were thirsty. So it wasn't even really about belief necessarily, though it certainly starts there. It was, what did you do? Like, how do you put that faith into action? And as I'm listening to you, and what surprised you in your young adulthood, there's a direct connection to that. Then to me, it's such a powerfully practical litmus test of our faith is, am I involved in meeting the needs of other people? Because if you zoom out, that's the mission of Jesus. He came to humanity who could not help themselves, and he met our biggest need, which was our sin issue. So yeah, that's powerful.
I'm curious, Crystal, how much of those two things that you just mentioned play into each other. So, like the way that you were raised in Hispanic culture, like there's something different about that. And I think even I've spent a bunch of time in Honduras, so I sometimes I say I'm Latina inside because they're my people. They're my people. But I think that's a culture that like meets the needs of each other and does community in a really different way than a lot of different cultures. And so I'm wondering, like, do you see not just the fact that like you're a child of God, like which is the fact, the core piece to you, but do you see those two things playing in, like how you were raised in a Hispanic culture in taking care of the needs of people as well? And what is like, how have those two things played together in your life?
Yeah, that in a Hispanic culture, like when I visited El Salvador, I've like all my life, like I visited El Salvador, I want to say. When I was 4, I went there. When I was 7, was there for like a month. And then when I was like in 8th grade, I came back for the summer. And then, I just would always make it, like family would always make it a priority to visit El Salvador. So me, I have like attached, like a full attachment to like my home country, my parents' home country in El Salvador. And I feel like I'm a part of that like country already too, but I'm born and raised here, but yeah, I mean for me, yeah, like that those experiences, like everything works in like a togetherness. I want to say like every if you're in help, like you're gonna have like 5 people coming over and trying to help you. And that's what I've tried to do here too. When I see somebody in help, I want to help them. Even though like it may not be just 5 people. I just want to be that first person to like help. And I think one thing that also sticks out is like food. Like we love food. Like that I feel like that's our love language. Like whenever I go to El Salvador, I always will be fed. Like everywhere I go, they're like, "Oh, here, try this, try that, try this. You want more of this? You want more of that?" And I'm like, "Oh, thank you. I'll eat some more and stuff." You'll never have an empty stomach, I'm telling you. And I think that's a way to express our gratitude and express how much we care and want to love for another person or things like that. And for me, that's something that I carried with me through my job too, where a patient would come or a client would come or a family would come, and I would ask them like, "Do you guys want water? Do you guys want water? I can offer you guys water." And they would say yes, some would say no. And I think starting that, they would place their guard down a little and they would like see how much that I'm, human too. Like I can see that you are here in a vulnerable place, but I still want to help in such a little way like water. And so, yeah, for me, I carried that into my career path. And I saw also, sadly, in my career path, a lot of Hispanic population in need. So, like, I also felt like sad that my community has to start over in a way back in step 1 or step 0 or And, it hurts, at times because it's like sometimes progress or sometimes like things don't go the way that they're planned. And sometimes the system is just made to, not help you grow. And it hurts, but I see the resilience and I see how much they they feel like just having me listen to them helps. And so I think that to me like is how I see those two things correlate with one another.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love that.
And I too love food. So can I be a part of the Hispanic community as
Oh
well? Just
yeah.
honorary member.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I love that. Okay. Next question. What do you think older generations misunderstand most about young adults today?
I think they misunderstand how open we are to Christ.
Hmm.
I want to say there's been friends of mine that I've talked to that don't believe in God, Christ, but like really respect the way that I talk about him and like really share about him in my social media. And they always know like, oh, Crystal's she's Christian, she's Christian. But that doesn't mean like it's bad for them. Like they're just like, okay, I know like this person is trying to be more like Christ or trying to is really in their faith and everything. And so I think it's a misconception how people think that like, oh, just because you're a young adult Christian, oh, and that's no. I think it's like we're more open to it and everything.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good. Andrea, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of talk about young adults just in general, like walking
Yeah,
away from the church,
yeah.
statistically speaking, but there's been this uprise of like young people like just being hungry for Christ and for like this deep desire to like connect with the Lord and to grow in the Lord. And so I think that's we're kind of caught in this in between of like statistically speaking what's been talked about so much and then kind of this movement of young people like seeking and searching after God. Like what do you think would help the church, like if you could imagine something for the church, like the church as a whole, what do you think would help this like older generation to understand what you've just described, like what you're experiencing, your hunger for God, the way that you want to incorporate how you were raised and like who you are in Christ in your workplace? What would be some ways that the church could come alongside of you in that?
I would want to say starting with those who already grew up with the faith. I want to say I think there's a proverb in chapter 22 saying how let me read it for you. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And that to me, like, speaks, like, the stats there is already, like, proven too, where it's like people that even though they grew up with the faith and are no longer Christian do end up coming back, actually. And so I think even just starting to continue to pour into those who already are growing up in the church is super important because I grew up in the church and I think it benefited me so much how much time the church poured into me. And so I think starting there is definitely a good place for young adults to see to
Mm.
increase their faith, I guess.
Yeah, it's good. And Andrea and I, being pastors to young adults in our day-to-day life, we're kind of in the mix of just different conversations and even like research and things like that. And like Andrea was saying, there is a very clear I don't know, like a groundswell of faith and conversations about faith and focus on Jesus. And I think that sometimes it's connected to what we would refer to as like traditional church, but a lot of times, at least in my experience, it's not really necessarily connected to religion or church as it has been. There's a new complexion, I think, that's emerging of what the church in America is and what the church in America should be. And I think those of us who have been walking with Jesus for some time can look back over the last, half a century and see the progression of the way the church has been, and really can, I mean, if we're honest, can say, I think we do need a new chapter, a new complexion of what it means to follow Jesus in America today. And so I'm so encouraged by this young generation and what I see happening, because it isn't like it has been. And I think that's really, really an important distinction and necessary. And Andrea, your question was such a perfect segue into our last question for Crystal. What's something that you wish the church would stop assuming about young adults, and something that you wish it would start doing instead?
Yeah, I want the church to stop assuming that young adults are not open to Christ and they're not like, what's it called, as involved in religious aspects, I want to say too. I see like, especially now for me, I'm friends with like, I was friends with people that are not Christian, and I'm friends with people who are Christian. And there's this one person I'm thinking of like who wasn't Christian, but I brought him to, our youth group one time. And then now, like, even though he didn't fully become Christian in the time of youth group, when he entered adulthood this last year, he got baptized and he started like talking about Christ more in his social media. And that to me speaks about, especially as a man too. Like I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's so hard for like me to see, especially like men of God. But now like I'm seeing more of a rise in how men of God are coming in, because now the church is also having a Brotherhood of Hope, a small young adult group, which is like all males, like all they're just going in a Sunday evening, learning about God's word, and I'm just like, wow, that is speaking volumes. But I also like think a woman also needs to have their own group as well in the church too, which I'm trying to hopefully get up. But yeah, I think it's important to get young adults involved in the church,
Yeah.
but also like make it appealing in a way too. But it is like more open to young adults. I want to say that God is like moving all the time, and I see it a lot in other people's lives, and I think that's what we should focus on.
Yeah, it's good.
I think
Um,
it's,
Go
I
ahead,
think,
Andrea.
sorry.
No, it's okay. Go
Well,
ahead.
I'm just thinking, I think it's a good reminder. I think like there's seed planting when it comes to like ministry and like coming alongside of people. And if you go back to your very first story about somebody that said something to you that had an impact on your career, in the same way, what you just shared about your friend that, you invited and then maybe didn't engage in the way that you like, our hope is you engage, you come to Christ, you get involved, and like, that's the A prayer. But that he would come back like a little later on, I think is just a reminder to the church too. Like this is a lifelong process. It's not a like step one, step two. It's not like an easy process. And for young adults, I feel like because I mean, and this isn't to take offense to or anything, but young adults are all over the place all the time. That like we can't give up on that. So you might see somebody for a time period and then they fall off the face of the earth and then they come back. And I think staying engaged with that person matters. And then the other thing I was thinking about too was like I was just going back to your cultural roots and you talking about food and thinking about the Hispanic culture. Um, with some of what you've said is like, could it be as simple as like the church just opening up their homes to young adults, like, and feeding you and doing life with you, that it's not,
Mm,
like Jerry just mentioned, like things are changing in the church. And I think probably gone are the days of like having to have these massive big programs with like this flashy everything, but you're wanting people to do life with. I mean, that's your story is a testament to your family, like mentors, and now you're doing that for other people. But it might not be as complex as we think it is in the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
So
So
those are just
true.
some of my reflections.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. One of the outcomes, Crystal, that we hope for this podcast is that we're helpful to other, not just young adults, but also those who really want to invest and are connected with young adults. They might be parents, it might be like young adult pastors or volunteer leaders or whatever the case. And so much of what you have shared today, I think, is really good stuff to chew on for us to think about. And I know that your story that's Crystal's story and that's unique, but so much of what you shared, I think, is really way more like universal than that when it comes to where young adults are today and how someone like me and Andrea can do even better and be even more effective in connecting with and reaching and thinking through as we travel together and kind of like linking arms together. What do we need to keep in mind as we walk along together? And I think we've really hit on some helpful truths that I think a lot of leaders are gonna find beneficial. So, thanks for sharing your story. I know you probably didn't mean to have that happen, but I really do think that that's going to be a great benefit and kind of an outcome of today's episode. So, thanks for sharing all that. All right. Anything else that you either of you want to share, or as we wrap things up, any closing words or thoughts?
Yeah, I have one more question. I
Okay,
want to
just
ask you
go.
that you weren't prepped for, but I keep coming back to this like cultural piece, and I think there's a lot of people that sit in your shoes that like maybe are I guess first generation. I think you mentioned first generation, you've been going to college. Is there anything that you would say would be helpful to the church as a whole to minister to young adults that come from a different cultural setting that
Mm,
you feel like, because I think there's things that you carry as somebody who's non-white. I have two kids that are non-white, so they're both adopted, and so I'm always thinking through that lens. But as somebody that's non-white living in this culture that has a lot of things happening in it, is there anything that you would want the church to know, or any suggestions as to how to come alongside um, of people that come from different cultures? Does that make sense?
yeah, it does. I want to say starting with
It's kind of
language.
like a loaded question. So,
Yeah, it's okay. I like
yeah.
it. It's really I think my culture is like one of the things I just now started to appreciate again. Like I again growing up, I didn't think much like of my culture being super important. I just like was like, "Oh yeah, I'm Hispanic. I speak Spanish." Um Nothing special. I thought it was nothing special. But coming out of like high school, I started to put that, like, I started speaking more Spanish. I started to embrace who I am. And part of that too is like the church, I wish had more Spanish like languages incorporated too. Like, I just wish in a way, like, you're welcome here is like also like in translated, like bienvenidos, like I hope that's what I want in the church, in the American church, like to allow other cultures to also integrate into their church, even if it's like predominantly white, like uh just like saying a simple like hola, a simple like something, I feel like helps a lot for like my culture and everything. But I also think like the church is sometimes not as involved in like volunteer work. Luckily for me though, like Gaithersburg Church of the Nazarene is a place where food distribution happens. So a lot of like Hispanic populations come in to get the food they need for the week. And it's not just, of course, Hispanic population is also other different ethnic groups. And for me, like again, like having to serve like my culture, like having to serve people who look like me is like such a big thing because like it's important to pour into somebody that is going through something and letting them know that they're not alone in this walk in life. But yeah, I wanted to share too, like there's this couple that is from Peru that is in Gaithersburg Church of the Nazarene, and they don't speak a lot of Spanish, but they connect with me and they connect with other Hispanic congregation members, and I think it's really speaks to like how much we're trying to grow in the church. And
Mm.
yeah, but I grew up also, I want to say sorry too, that I grew up Pentecostal, and so for me like worship music is also like a big thing for me. Like I love singing in Spanish. I think it just gets me like up and going and just excited for the Lord. Like I don't know, like I think for me worship music really speaks a lot to especially like the Hispanic population too, because I hear a lot of testimony when I listen to the Spanish songs and worship, you know. Yeah, for me that is like my yeah thing.
It's good.
Love that.
Now
Yeah, I
we
think that's
don't.
super helpful. I appreciate your
Yeah, yeah. And Andrea, what a great question too. In our context, in our local church, now we don't have like a translation to Spanish, in every service with someone there live.
Hmm.
And this might be a step in that direction. Like what we do is like when we're singing the worship songs and the music and stuff, we have both of the languages on the screen. So there's Spanish, across the top, and then there's English. And then during the sermon, we over the side, there's like a TV screen that like in real time translates the message into Spanish, so that like people who speak like predominantly or only Spanish, like they could sit in this section and they could be able to, kind of read along. And I know that that's not the best, solution, but if there are leaders that are listening to this episode, they're like, well, what could we do to make better cultural connections? That's a couple of things that we try and do. And mission trips that open us up to.
yeah.
Or go ahead, Andrea.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think there's also you kind of nailed it that like when you're in your teenage years, I think for a lot of people that come from different cultures, it like teens have a hard time leaning into that. Like in an Americanized culture,
Mhm.
predominantly white, in some of the spaces that they walk. And so it's like I'm just latching on. I'm like so curious. I would love to have like follow-up conversation with you at some point, but like it's interesting that as you grow as a person and you grow as a Christ follower and somebody whose identity is rooted in Christ, that you come back to those cultural roots like in your young adult years. And I think as people that are working with young adults, like we need to hear that that's something that like we can come alongside of, because a lot of times you see, I think in a youth ministry setting, like almost like I don't want to be known as that. I don't want to feel different. And now you're saying at 24, hey, this is part of who I am, and it's actually a beautiful part. And so that's just like I just think that's so like profound, and something for us as the church as leaders to just go, wow, like how do we, like you've matured into that, but how do we help people come out of that like fear of like this is who I am into this place of like I'm a young adult and I'm Hispanic, and that's like a huge piece of who I am. I think that's a room for the church. I think that's a place for the church to grow into. So
Yeah.
thank you. That's why I wanted to ask that question, because
Yeah.
it's cool to see that in your story, and
Mhm.
yeah, we appreciate that. So
Yeah.
Thank
that's all I
you.
got. I got no more questions.
Yeah, no, that was the atomic bomb question at the end. That was so good. I'm glad you asked that question. That was good. Well, thank you, Crystal, so much for being a part of this conversation. And like I said, I know anyone who listens to it is going to be number one encouraged, just spiritually encouraged, and they're going to be blessed. And I think probably even challenged in terms of like how are we thinking about young adults today and connecting with all complexions and all cultures and things like that. And what can I do, no matter who I am or what culture I'm in? What can I do to better connect with other people and be more hospitable and help encourage others spiritually? So you've helped us do that even better. So thank you, Crystal. And Andrea, of course, thank you so much for taking time. This has been another great episode. And thanks everybody for listening. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, wherever you're listening, make sure you do that so you can get alerted to who knows when our next episode is going to be. I wish I could say tomorrow, but probably not tomorrow.
We're going to be so consistent in 2026.
We really are. This is our new leaf that we're turning over in 2026. Lord, may it be so.
Yes.
Oh, so good. All right. Well, thanks, Crystal. Thanks, Andrea. For listening. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults.